Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to episode 3 of Secrets of the Innovator. I'm your host, Jason Sansucci, drone scientist, neurodiversity champion, and hella good dancer at Juniper Unmanned. We're helping enterprises break through to new levels of performance using remote sensing and analytics. Join us each week as we introduce you to a new problem solver approaching every challenge with an innovator's mindset. With me on today's show is Dawn Zoldi. Dawn is the CEO and founder of P3 Tech Consulting, a 25-year U.S. Air Force military officer and an internationally recognized subject matter expert on tech law, regulation and policy, and recognized as a woman to watch in UAS 2019. You may also recognize Dawn from her Drones at Dawn podcast. Dawn, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Jason. I'm so excited to be here.
I am very happy that you are here. Dawn, you are a woman of many, many talents. Just start off, give us the cliff notes on your career and how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. So hard to do cliff notes because really you got to start with life is a team sport, right? So it all started when I was a child. No, seriously, I had amazing parents and I have amazing parents that supported me. And this whole entire time, when I entered the military, it was quite an adventure. I had amazing mentors and leaders along the way. And it really was in the military that I got exposed to drone law and policy and regulation. And that's what really sparked my passion in this industry. And that was about 2012-ish. And I've been nerding out like you, Jason, ever since, just studying it on my own. And eventually, like you said, 2019 got the Women to Watch Award. That was a huge accelerator for me. I created my company as a result, and it's been growing ever since. And now I'm doing it full time. So that's the 30-second, Reader's Digest version of my career and how I got where I got.
I love that. I love that so much. And interestingly enough, so being that you were a military officer, I read recently, and I thought this was so much fun. So how does it feel to remove the federal disclaimer? Because we don't have one. We don't have a ticker down on the bottom that says,
not anymore.
Blah, 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 blah.
I'm liberated. I'm free. It was weird, though, I will tell you. So 25 years of military service, as you said, and it's kind of been a layered approach, right? So I shed my uniform in 2018, and that was 25 years, pretty much my entire adult life dedicated to the Air Force as an active duty member, and then 2 years with the General Counsel's Office for the Air Force as a civilian attorney, and then just the past year with the Air Force Academy as a faculty member and the deputy director of their Center for Character and Leadership Development. So it all along the way, all of those transitions, they've been great, but to have the flexibility now to engage with the FAA, to work with NASA, and actually represent back to the Air Force, which I couldn't do before in my business, is so exciting. So I really am looking forward to what this year brings.
That is super exciting. Yes, no, I know what that feels like. Not nearly to the extent that you have. I've always sort of been just very outspoken and didn't really, not that I don't care what people think, but it's more of you know what? If we're going to be breaking boundaries and breaking through, some words need to be said that just need to be heard. So I think it's really good that we're able to just do that openly and honestly and transparently now. And I'll tell you, I've been very impressed with this industry as a whole, with just the higher level of dialogues that are happening without complete competition. It's you know what? We all need to get to this spot. This is how we're going to get there. And I've just been impressed so far. So I'm curious. So you on your website, actually, you know what? Let me do this. You have a website. There it is, scrolling along the bottom there. Everyone should go to Dawn's website. Absolutely great resource. Tell us more about your brand, LawTech Connect. Wow, that is a tongue twister. LawTech Connect.
Absolutely. I mean, it kind of goes back to my mission statement, right? Which is connecting people with a passion for advanced tech platforms with policies, plans, programs, information to succeed. The LawTech Connect piece is all of really my vision initially was to connect lawyers with people in the industry. It's still part of my vision. And I created that brand specifically to do events tied to conferences where I bring lawyers in for a continuing legal education event. I had one lined up last year. COVID, waylaid that. I've kind of sidelined that effort, but it's a brand that I use for my Law Tech Connect column for Insight Unmanned Systems magazine, because it's all about, again, connecting law and policy with technology issues and elevating the industry. So that's really what my brand is all about.
I love that. That totally makes sense. I'm just trying to think what I would think about an entire conference full of just lawyers. Intimidated,
well,
maybe intimidated.
Well, let me take that back. The vision was the lawyers get the continuing legal education credit, which they have to get every year. But to bring in industry and have mixed panels and have that rich dialogue, because I think, Jason, you would agree, what we find oftentimes is there's some lawyers in a back room having conversations, drafting up regulations or policies, and potentially not talking to industry, putting these things forward, and then industry's like, what the heck, where did this come from? And also there's not a lot of lawyers that have knowledge or experience in this industry. And part of my goal is to create that cadre of lawyers that can speak intelligently about these issues and, again, help elevate the industry, because it's typically regulation and policy that's holding the industry back. And if we can all work together, that's how we move it forward.
100% agree. Absolutely. So on that note, thank you for the wonderful segue. So what are some of the innovative emerging issues that you've tackled and provided creative solutions for?
Well, being a lawyer, and especially a military lawyer for most of my career, it's always about serving the commander and getting the mission accomplished. And so one of the things I'm really proud of when I was at Air Combat Command is, there was really no solid domestic drone policy for the Department of Defense at the time. And a lot of those aircraft were coming home. They were doing training missions at units in the United States. And the rules downrange overseas in combat are very different from the rules domestically, obviously because of our Constitution and a whole host of other issues, intelligence oversight. And so one of the innovative solutions I came up with, I created a DoD, a Department of Defense Domestic Imagery Working Group. We kind of consider ourselves like the drone flash mob. We had no official charter, but we got things done, and we would meet in the Pentagon, and we shadow wrote the DoD's policy in 2015, and that was re-upped in 2018. General Mattis, SecDef Mattis, signed that one out, and the chart in the back, I'm proud to say I wrote that one. So pretty cool. That was and again, it enables domestic operations for the military, which primarily consist of training. So that's, I think, a good example of how, as a lawyer, you can facilitate innovation and drone missions.
I think that's fantastic. Shadow writing and just seeing something that shows up that's yours, that you recognize, and something so reaching and powerful, that's got to be fun.
It is fun. And again, just to kind of dovetail on that, team sport idea, there was a major that worked with me. Her name's Laura Pete, real smart lady. She helped me with that. And then, of course, the folks in the DoD, they finalized it, right? So I contributed significantly to that, but to have a piece of that, and that was kind of a big deal.
That is a big deal. That's very, very cool. So if we're talking about how things have sort of been going and where things are going, I'm curious, and we could have a much longer conversation about this. You just see it popped up. We're going to talk about industry outlook. Where do you see the industry going? And two-part question. Where do you see it's going? Because I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this. And what's happened in the past year, COVID-related or not, that excites you in this industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Where it's going, I mean, it's literally going to take off. I mean, it's going to fly.
Nice.
I'm always punny. Good for that. You know, comic relief. So, yeah, I think what you saw in the last year has been significant leaps and bounds, and it's just going to continue. So, drone delivery, I think, is where it's at. And what you saw, you know, I'm going to give a shout out to Drone Up. I mean, just to be clear, they don't pay me for this, you know, but I'm a fan. And, you know, they, as Tom Walker, their CEO, has stated, you know, they run headfirst into the regulations, and they were out there testing the limits of Part 107, this mindset of, which is a special operator mindset. Don't tell me what I can't do. Like, let's figure out what I can do. And, you know, they were out there at that campus. Where was it? Somewhere in Virginia, I think, in April, and put out the Operation Last Mile report. And that, you know, and then from there, they actually made it a reality by partnering with Walmart in several states to, through COVID, deliver the at-home testing kits. So that's one example under Part 107. But then what you saw was Part 135 approvals exploding. And I say exploding because there's just been a few very visible examples of that. You know, where you had North Carolina DOT partnering, I believe it was with Zipline and
that's right.
Matternet and the hospital group there in
WakeMed.
Yeah, WakeMed. Thank you. One great example, and you know, several others. So drone delivery is going to continue to soar, in my opinion, and that's the next wave. I think that the next biggest thing coming, when you think about like what happened last year and how it transitions into next year or this year and the following, is beyond visual line of sight. You know, we have remote ID rule. We'll talk about that in a second, so hold one. But you know, Skydio got the first statewide BVLOS waiver for bridge inspections in North Carolina. Again, a lot of these are coming through the FAA's research and development, you know, mechanisms like the IPP, the Integrated Pilot Program, which is now called Beyond. But they're happening, and companies are getting on board. They're getting these waivers. They're getting these approvals. They're building the safety and use cases. And beyond visual line of sight, to me, is the next thing. Like, that's what we have to tackle as an industry. Like, let's make that happen, right? And last but not least, remote ID, right? So that rule, as you know, kind of got launched at the end of last year after a year's worth of 53,000 comments, getting adjudicated, etc. There's still lots of pieces to fall into place for that. You know, the technology's one, you know, ultimately what that's going to look like. I just did an article for Inside Unmanned yesterday that launched about the advisory circular that just came out, 107-2A.
Read it.
And not a lot of remote ID, like, hey, here are these two websites we're going to have with dead links that aren't existing yet. And, you know, like, seriously, I went to, it says, you know, advisory circular 89-1, like methods of compliance, and 89-2, declaration of compliance. And I looked them up and they don't exist.
There's nothing there yet.
There's nothing, there's no there. And so, now there will be something there eventually. And that's the exciting part. Like, I have to give props to the FAA. They, you know, things have moved forward, especially in COVID, because of their open-mindedness, their willingness to give these approvals, their use of these R&D mechanisms to test the limits, not only of 107, but at 135 and some of these other things. So I'm excited to see what happens this year. I think it's going to be a big year.
I think it's going to be a big year too. I am very excited about it. I actually saw, and I think the rest of the industry saw it as well, COVID was an accelerator, like in a lot of industries.
Yeah.
It was just a massive accelerator. Like, the need was there. I mean, come on, if Michael Jordan has drones on his golf course, come on. I mean, it's one of those things that is just starting to come into its own and accelerate rapidly. Like, I'm not saying we're going exponential, but maybe we are. Maybe this is the year. I mean, and I don't know what you think. Like, do you think this is the year that the drone industry starts to actually go exponential?
I think it is. I think it's going to be later in the year. But one thing I'll say, you know, Jason, your words matter. And we always talk about drones. And some people just, when they think about drones, they think of small UAS only. When I use that term, I use it to cover the full spectrum, including, you know, what we call in the military Group 4 and 5, the very large drones. Okay. And what you're seeing there as well, which I didn't talk about, is this infusion of capital in those large cargo drones. It's almost like every day some other announcement, another company getting like millions and millions of dollars. And you know, what's that going to look like? And so when you think about advanced air mobility, and you think about urban air mobility, and you know, eVTOL, these things are starting to move. Things are starting to fall into place. And frankly, the military is, to use your word, an accelerator of that. You know, when you look at what AFWERX is doing with Agility Prime, you look at what the Army is doing with their JTARS solicitation. The military is helping move the industry forward, and there's a lot going on this year. I think this is going to be an exponential year. And I think 2022 will be even bigger, and you know, obviously, and beyond.
That is a very rosy outlook. But I share it. I share that outlook. I think that is something that we have to look forward to this year and beyond, is that the industry overall and its tentacles into other industries that are starting to adopt this technology is also going to continue to just permeate even more industries as there's more early adopters are turning into that early majority. I think that's happening this year. Do I think that we're like jumping that gap yet? Maybe, but we'll see. In some industries, I think we are. And others, we'll see, to be determined. But I think that's going to lead to some challenges. So I'm just curious. So what do you think are the challenges and roadblocks that we need to overcome to help that happen, to see that exponential scale?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. I think, you know, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of times the regulation and policies, they don't keep up with the technology. And so that's tends to be a limiting factor. And I hate to say that as a lawyer, because I think oftentimes lawyers get blamed, you know, we're the toads in the road, you know, like we're the speed bumps. But it's not necessarily the lawyers. There's a lot of folks in the aviation industry with a safety background that are very cautious, right, before we just put things up in the air. What's that supposed to look like? So the regulatory policy piece. I think a big challenge also is workforce development. I know you have a heart for this, Jason, and we're going to talk later on my podcast about some of your efforts in this area. You know, we both have a passion for education and training. And what does that look like? How are we inspiring all of these young people, these diverse young people, to have a passion for STEM and want to get into this industry? How do we prepare the American workforce to be able to support this industry going forward? Because it's going to be big, and are we ready there? And I think there's a lot of great efforts happening right now on workforce development. But the example I gave you, even on the attorney side, how many law schools have even a class on drone law or aviation law? I can tell you, most of them don't even have one on international law.
Wow.
So I mean, that's just one example, and that's maybe an elite example. But at the younger levels, at the elementary, middle school, high school, you know, what can we do to insert this, you know, this technology into the classroom that will inspire kids to say, you know what, this is something I can do. This is something I want to do. And to show them the extensive careers, the range of careers you can have. I mean, heck, I'm a lawyer and I'm in this ecosystem. You are an engineer, if I recall correctly. Is that right? Am I saying
something like that?
Okay. Well, you are a techie, and you know, look what you're doing, right? So, I mean, we're completely different in our backgrounds, and yet we're both in the industry. We both have podcasts, so go figure. So those to me are like two of the biggest challenges. The third one I'll say, because I love the power of threes, I think that's important. The third thing I'll say is public perception. And I think that took a positive turn in COVID last year, because you saw what I'll call an explosion of positive use cases, because drones are the ultimate social distancer. Whether it was as Drone Up delivering at home, kits for people to get a COVID test, or delivering medicines, whatever that was, that was a positive message. And I think people start now seeing this and thinking, drones can be used for good for society. We like that. Let's get a little more of that. I wouldn't mind having a drone drop off my pizza instead of having to meet that kid at the door, with his mask on. I think the third challenge is public perception, and I think we've chipped a little bit away at that in this past year.
100% agree. And I think one of the biggest things that we can do to sort of aid that public perception is what we're doing right now. Just a dialogue about the things that where the industry is going, and being open and transparent about it, and hopeful, and just smart minds getting together talking about what the industry is doing that is good, but all diverse backgrounds. I think as long as that keeps going, this industry is going to keep going absolutely exponential, and I'm very excited about it. And one thing that's going to also help it going is podcasts like this, right? So I'll do one more thing, because Dawn, you also have your own podcast. So I'm going to put a little ticker. If you want to support Dawn and her podcast, she has her own Patreon. All right, I'm a little jealous. I don't have a Patreon. She's got a Patreon. But there's multiple different levels that you can support the way that she's doing, and a lot of wonderful insights that combines that amazing career and everything that she's doing at different levels. Go check it out. Just go check that out. I think that's awesome. So Dawn, thank you. And thank you for listening to The Secrets of Innovator. This episode was brought to you by Juniper Unmanned, remote sensing professionals like me, giving managers and industry unprecedented access to information on physical assets. Want to learn why enterprises trust us for their programs, including DOE and other big agencies? Visit us online at www.juniperunmanned.com. That's it for today. Dawn, thank you so much. And we'll have to make sure you catch us on Dawn's website, Drones at Dawn, here coming soon.
Thank you.